for both of you, there's been at least 4 documentaries, I think. How does that fit into the decision process to take on the subject and the approach?
Funnily enough, when I optioned the book way back when in 2004, I was introduced to the book, and I had no idea that the documentaries existed. And I'll never forget the day after I optioned the book that I learned the documentaries existed. And so I was kind of, like taken aback a little bit. But my introduction to the story was through the book. And I'll never forget the day that I put the 2 documentaries in and watched them back to back for about 4 straight hours, and just sat there with my jaw dropped. And because I don't know if any of you have seen the documentaries, but they're quite. It's quite a colorful cast of characters, and it both intrigued me further, but it also was very interesting because, to be quite honest, I had a reaction to Damien that I think was probably, I could understand why the town was able to be manipulated and whipped up into this frenzy, because Damien is a very interesting, very bright, and complicated, unique personality, very strong personality. And so it kind of set me on a journey of doing even more due diligence on the project, and kind of just reassuring myself that it was the right thing to make the film, but that's the impact that it had.
It's interesting that the documentaries actually did really focus on a tiny slice of the story, and the book was really a much bigger picture. And going in, we knew that the world had sort of seen these documentaries, so we were going to have to find new angles and new information, and there is a lot of new information in this film that never came out in any of those documentaries. And we just thought it was important to show other sides to this story because it's such a complex story that has so many different people involved. We chose 2 characters that had very little spotlight on them prior to us making this film.
We had a couple of directors that were attached, well, one in particular was attached prior to Adam, and but then Adam was really, when we found Adam, it kind of unlocked the whole project and thrust it immediately forward. And I think with every film, it's funny, you go through all these journeys, but I think you always end up exactly where you're supposed to end up.
Roles.
Well, Reese was always our first choice, and we were very fortunate to get her. And Colin, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, Colin and Adam had worked together once before, and I think Adam really felt the same thing about Colin, which is that he was his first choice, and they had a working relationship, and we just felt that, Ron Lax is a real person who unfortunately recently passed away, actually, since we completed the film, but he was this kind of strong, quiet individual. I mean, Liz had a close relationship with him and knew him quite well, and we really felt that Colin embodied the spirit of this individual.
He did, and Ron. It was funny. We showed the film to Ron and his wife, and it was not conscious on Colin's part at all. But his wife felt that that Colin had absolutely just captured Ron down to his walk. But that was all very organic. It was not, a conscious mimicry or anything.
We've become so accustomed to seeing Southern courtrooms. I was thinking as I was watching the film, there's the legacy all the way back, clearly To Kill a Mockingbird and movies like that, but also the Grisham-based films. And do you think that heritage is a challenge for a movie like this, or an opportunity because people understand the rhythms and the tropes of it, or do you think that you kind of have to separate from all the melodrama?
Well, I think that one thing that we were very conscious of, just in terms of it taking place in the South And this being a story about real people from the South, we were very conscious about wanting to be certain that we portrayed them not stereotypically in any way, which is obviously a kind of pitfall that you can fall into. And I think that Adam did a fabulous job of that, and all of our actors. We were all very conscious of that, and I'm really proud of the way it turned out from that aspect.
Jason Baldwin, one of the West Memphis Three, is an executive producer with us. Again, Liz really spent a lot of time meeting and knowing these characters like Pam Hobbs and Jason and other players who were involved in the case. And so Jason he had always really liked the book and in fact met his fiancée through the author of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came on board as one of our executive producers. So we had really great.
As did Jesse.
As did Jesse. Miss Kelly, and Pam Hobbs was very involved.
Ron was very involved.
Ron Lax. So we really had a great cadre of people to advise us because they were the real people who were involved. And Jason Baldwin came to the set a few days, and in fact he came to the set when we were filming the courtroom sequences, and he just said it was the most surreal thing for him to sort of go back and see himself be sentenced to life in prison once again in this courtroom. But we felt really blessed to have people such as himself so closely attached to our project. Adam also made a decision early on, because this was a story that had been told through some documentaries, so people had seen some of the real places and some of the real people. Wow. He decided that he wasn't trying to replicate everything. He was really trying to, find the essence of the story and tell it in his own way. And the courtroom is just a good example of that, which is that the actual courtroom was a very modern, boring courtroom, but we found this location that was kind of more of a classic Southern old courtroom that had great light coming through the windows and that kind of thing. And he said that was the right thing to do, because he wasn't trying to simply recreate every last detail that people had already seen in the documentaries.
Oh, that's interesting, because you could really go sort of the in cold blood route where you're trying to do as close to journalism as possible, or Mississippi Burning, where you kind of take the mythology of it.
Mm-hmm. And in contrast to what Adam said, our writers actually determined early on that they really wanted to try to be as close as possible to the story and to the facts. And so the script itself is very, very factual and was based on a lot of court transcripts. And so it's not like there's a lot of fictionalizing of the story, but in the way Adam wanted to approach it, again, he wasn't just trying to make another documentary.